My beloved child. There are moments when heaven grows so quiet that even the winds seem to wait. This is one of those moments. Before you continue with your day, remain here for just a little while. Sometimes a message finds a soul precisely when that soul has almost convinced itself that nothing extraordinary could ever happen again. If these words have reached you today, then allow your heart to become still, because what follows is not meant to frighten you, but to awaken something that has been sleeping inside you for far too long. You have wondered, perhaps more times than you have admitted aloud, whether anyone has ever truly seen the person you are beneath the disappointments, beneath the misunderstandings, beneath every silent sacrifice that no one applauded. You have carried kindness where bitterness would have been easier. You have chosen patience while others rushed to judge. You have loved quietly, even when your own heart longed to be loved with the same sincerity. Know this, nothing hidden remains unseen forever. There are conversations that begin on earth before they echo through eternity. There are truths that remain buried only until the appointed moment arrives for light to touch them. What has long been concealed is beginning to move toward revelation, and even now, hearts that once stood at a distance are beginning to understand what they could never understand before. Someone has spoken honestly about you. Not with perfect words, for human language is always incomplete, but with unexpected sincerity. They described your compassion when no audience was watching. They remembered your loyalty when it brought you nothing in return. They spoke of the quiet strength you carried through seasons when you felt completely alone. The one whose heart has been quietly intertwined with yours heard these words. They expected another ordinary conversation. Instead, they encountered a reflection of you unlike any they had imagined. Something shifted. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But deeply. A single truth has the power to disturb years of misunderstanding. And once truth enters a willing heart, silence becomes difficult to maintain. Far away from where you stand today, questions have begun forming inside another soul. Memories that once seemed insignificant are returning with unexpected clarity. Small encounters are suddenly revealing meanings that were invisible before. They are beginning to wonder whether every coincidence was something far greater than coincidence. They cannot explain why your name continues returning to their thoughts. They cannot explain why ordinary moments suddenly remind them of you. They cannot explain why peace refuses to settle until they discover more. This is not because destiny removes human choice. Every heart must still choose. Every soul must still decide whether to move toward truth or away from it. Yet truth has a remarkable way of calling gently until it can no longer be ignored. And that gentle call has already begun. You, meanwhile, have been standing in a season that often felt invisible. You questioned whether your prayers disappeared into empty skies. You wondered whether your tears served any purpose beyond proving how deeply you could endure disappointment. Yet every unseen tear became a testimony. Every quiet act of mercy became part of a story larger than you realized. Every moment when you refused to surrender your compassion became another thread woven into a tapestry that heaven never stopped creating. Even when you believed nothing was changing, everything was quietly changing. Sometimes the greatest transformations happen beneath the surface where impatient eyes cannot witness them. A seed buried beneath the earth appears lifeless. Yet beneath darkness, life is already unfolding. Roots grow before branches. Strength develops before beauty becomes visible. And hearts are prepared before they are united. Perhaps you have asked why waiting has lasted so long. Waiting is rarely punishment. More often, it is preparation disguised as silence. There were lessons neither of you could have learned together because each needed to discover them alone. One learned resilience. The other learned humility. One discovered forgiveness. The other discovered regret. Neither journey was wasted. Now those separate roads are beginning to bend toward a place neither expected. The conversation that revealed the truth about you did more than change another person's opinion. It awakened forgotten emotions. Not shallow excitement. Not passing curiosity. Something quieter. Something that lingers long after conversations end. Even now, they replay those words. What if I misunderstood? What if I judged too quickly? What if the person I have been unable to forget was never who I imagined? Questions like these possess unusual power. They open doors pride once kept locked. And once those doors begin opening, light finds its way inside. Yet there remains something they still do not know. There is a chapter hidden from both of you. A chapter that has been protected until neither fear nor impatience could destroy it before its proper time. Its pages have not yet been turned. But they soon will. And when they are, neither life will remain exactly as it once was. Part 1 ends here. The silence surrounding this moment is not empty. It is alive with possibilities that neither of you can fully understand yet. While you have continued living your ordinary days, believing that nothing significant was changing beyond what your eyes could see, another heart has been quietly wrestling with thoughts that refuse to disappear. The truth they heard was not loud. It was not dramatic. It arrived gently, wrapped inside an ordinary conversation, yet it carried an extraordinary weight. Long after the voices around them faded, those words remained. They echoed through quiet evenings and restless nights, returning again and again as though an invisible hand refused to let them be forgotten. They began remembering details they once ignored. They remembered the kindness in your voice when you had every reason to be cold. They remembered your patience during moments when others would have walked away. They remembered the way you chose peace instead of proving yourself right. These memories no longer felt random. They felt like pieces of a story they had misunderstood. A question settled deep within them: what if I never truly knew who they were? That single question became impossible to silence. Every answer they tried to give themselves only created another mystery. Every attempt to move on somehow led their thoughts back to you. It was as though every road they traveled eventually circled back to the same destination. Meanwhile, you have continued carrying burdens that no one fully understands. There have been moments when you smiled simply because you did not want anyone else to carry your pain. There have been nights when you whispered prayers into the darkness, wondering if anyone was listening. Yet none of those prayers disappeared. Each one became part of a greater unfolding. The answers have not always arrived in the way you expected, but they have been moving toward you with quiet certainty. There are seasons when life appears motionless while unseen pieces are being placed exactly where they belong. This is one of those seasons. The person whose heart has been stirred is beginning to recognize something that once frightened them. They were never truly afraid of you. They were afraid of what loving someone so deeply might require from them. That realization changes everything. Because once fear is exposed, it begins to lose its power. Walls that took years to build can begin to crack in a single moment of honesty. And honesty has finally entered their heart. Still, they hesitate. Not because they no longer care, but because they wonder whether too much time has passed. They wonder if you have forgotten them. They wonder if another chapter has already begun without them. Little do they know that some connections leave quiet footprints across the soul that time alone cannot erase. Even when life carries two people in different directions, certain memories refuse to fade because they were never meant to. There is still one truth hidden beneath everything they have discovered. It has not yet been spoken aloud. Not because it lacks importance, but because its moment has not fully arrived. When that truth finally comes into the light, every unanswered question will begin to make sense in ways neither of you could have imagined. And when that day arrives, both of you will look back at this season of silence and realize it was never emptiness at all. It was preparation. Preparation is rarely recognized while it is happening. Most people mistake it for delay, for disappointment, or even for abandonment. Yet the deepest transformations often take place in places where no one is applauding and where nothing appears to be changing on the surface. While you have been learning to release what you could not control, another soul has been learning what it truly means to value what was once taken for granted. There have been quiet moments when they found themselves staring into the distance, unable to explain why your memory returned with such clarity. Familiar places suddenly carried unfamiliar emotions. Songs they once ignored now seemed to tell a story they could not escape. Even ordinary days began to feel incomplete, as though something essential had been missing all along. At first, they resisted these feelings. They convinced themselves they would pass. They buried themselves in distractions, surrounded themselves with noise, and tried to outrun the questions that kept rising within them. But truth has a patient voice. It does not compete with chaos. It waits until the heart grows tired of pretending. Eventually, the silence became louder than the distractions. They began looking back, not through the lens of pride, but through the lens of honesty. They saw conversations they had misunderstood. They recognized moments when your kindness had been mistaken for weakness, your patience for indifference, your quiet strength for distance. Every memory revealed another layer they had failed to see before. Regret entered gently. Not the kind that destroys hope, but the kind that awakens wisdom. For the first time, they realized that some people are not meant to impress the world. Some are meant to transform a single heart. They wondered if that heart had been theirs all along. As these thoughts deepened, unexpected reminders of you appeared in the smallest moments. A familiar fragrance drifting through the air. A sentence spoken by a stranger. A sunrise that carried the same peace they once felt in your presence. None of these moments were extraordinary by themselves, yet together they formed a pattern too meaningful to ignore. Questions turned into longing. Longing turned into courage. And courage slowly began replacing fear. Still, another obstacle remained. The greatest battles are often fought within. Before anyone speaks a single word, countless conversations take place inside the heart. They wondered whether reaching out would be welcomed or rejected. They questioned whether forgiveness was even possible. They feared that their silence had already written an ending they could never rewrite. Yet hope continued whispering that unfinished stories are not always forgotten stories. While these emotions grew stronger, your own journey continued shaping you in ways you did not fully recognize. The disappointments that once felt unbearable had quietly become sources of compassion. The tears that seemed wasted had softened your spirit rather than hardening it. Every trial had been refining your character, preparing you to respond with wisdom instead of woundedness. Without realizing it, you had become someone stronger than the version of yourself who first entered this season. That strength was never meant to make you distant. It was meant to make you ready. Because every meaningful connection requires two hearts that have learned something through their separate journeys. One heart learns how to let go. The other learns how to return. One discovers patience. The other discovers courage. Only then can both truly understand the value of what stands before them. The days ahead hold moments neither of you expects. An ordinary morning may suddenly become unforgettable. A simple conversation may carry more meaning than either of you imagined. What appears to be a coincidence may reveal itself as the beginning of something that has been quietly unfolding for far longer than either of you realized. But there is still one final hesitation. One final question. One final decision that cannot be made by anyone else. It is already forming within their heart, growing stronger with every passing day. Soon, remaining silent will become more difficult than speaking the truth. And when that moment finally arrives, the words they have held back for so long will change the course of both your stories in ways that neither of you can yet foresee. That moment is closer than either of you realizes.